Welcome to the first Poudre River Forum. We're glad you're all here this morning. My name's Reagan Wascom, and I am the director of the Colorado Water Institute at Colorado State University, and it is my pleasure to be the greeter today and to introduce our forum. You know, there's a lot of us who have talked about doing a Poudre River Forum for a long time, and some of them are in this room, getting Greeley and Fort Collins and all the community and people up and down this great river that we live on together. And here we are. We finally pulled it off today. So it's great to see you here. I think we have a good program for you today. And our purpose really is to engage in learning about this river, celebrating this river, thinking about what we can do together as a community to make this a better river and a better place for us to live in, as well as for wildlife and all the amenities that we really get from this river. We're pleased. We got a great turnout. I think there's 275 folks coming today. This has been several years in the making in some ways, but we've had a really small group of folks that have been working hard to pull this day off for you together this year. So delighted to do that. So there's been a group of folks that we've called the Poudre Runs Through It Study Action Work Group. So they wanted to study as well as have action, right? Not just talk about it, but do some things. And this group has been working for about 18 months together, meeting about 30 folks from all different sectors: ag, muni, environment, recreation, development, really all the sectors that work on this river and are impacted by the river. And they've been planning and scheming and thinking about things that we could do as a community of this river together. And one of them was this forum, getting together to vision and talk and think about what we might do together. So today what we're going to do is we're going to learn some about the history of the river. We're going to learn some about how it works. We're going to think about how we can improve the health of this river. We're going to talk about some of the recent challenges that we face on this river. The fire and the flood have really turned things upside down for us. You all also will have a chance to be part of today. We're going to have some Q&A sessions, but at the end of the day, we really want to foster a dialogue, right? And that means listening to each other, as well as speaking and talking about your values and what you think about what we might do or what we should do or could do on this great river of ours. We have speakers from up and down the river that'll be here today. We also are going to have Supreme Court Justice Greg Hobbs, who is a history buff, and he'll be here today at lunch to talk about the history of this great river that runs through our communities and runs through our lives. And that's really what we're all about here today, is to try to accomplish some work, really, on this river that we live on. And to kick us off, I think we've got a treat. We've got 4 of the mayors from the communities along this river. And these mayors, what they're going to do, they're each going to share a reading with you, okay? So a bit of history that's been written by somebody else and has a historical context that relates to their community as the Poudre has flown through and their communities and things have changed. And so I want to introduce those mayors to you. We have Fort Collins Mayor Karen Weitkunat. We have Greeley Mayor Tom Norton. We have Mayor Pro Tem Bryan Voronin from the town of Timnath. And we have Mayor John Vazquez from the town of Windsor. Let's welcome the mayors, please. Okay. You guys can sit down. But thank you so much for being here. So I think what we'll do, really, without a whole lot of further to do, let's go ahead and get into it. And they're each going to start. We'll start with, look, they're arranged from upstream to downstream. Did you all notice that? And we're going to, and you know, the big dog sits downstream and has the senior water right, but he's got some intervening water users between him. So let's start with Karen Weitkunat, Mayor of Fort Collins. So Karen, if you would kick us off, please.
Thank you, and good morning. For approximately 5 miles, the Poudre River meanders through Fort Collins, bringing enjoyment, enrichment, engagement, peace, and prosperity to 153,000 residents of our great city. It is called the crown jewel, the lifeblood, and is the greatest environmental, cultural, and economic amenity to the city of Fort Collins and its residents. My reading is from the History of Larimer County by Ansel Watrous, writing in 1911. Watrous wrote, Fort Collins owes its place on the map to the intervention of a flood in the Poudre River. In the spring of 1864, the great masses of snow melted on the foothills, and torrents of water came pouring down into the channel of the Poudre, swelling the stream even with its banks. On the 9th of June, an extraordinary rainstorm set in on the watershed of the upper part of the river, melted the snow in the higher altitudes, and sent an enormous volume of water laden with driftwood pouring into the already swollen stream. The storm occurred in the afternoon, and the raging torrent swept down through the soldiers' camp, called Camp Collins at LaPorte, in the night, almost without warning. When morning broke, a scene of desolation presented itself. The campgrounds were completely submerged, while as far as the eye could reach up and down the river, nothing but a surging sea of muddy water could be seen. But fortunately, no lives were lost. A report of the disaster was sent to Colonel Collins at Fort Laramie, and he directed Captain Evans to look for a new location for the camp, one that would be beyond the dangers of floods in the future. Lieutenant Hanna, stationed in the area, sent a flattering description of a new site, giving its proximity to the river and saying that it was situated on high ground and with good drainage and had a fine view of the surrounding country for miles in each direction. That site is now occupied by the city of Fort Collins.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. My reading is from a book titled Timnath, a history written in 1996 by Del Miller and Elsie Fischer. The book gives an account of Mary P. Carpenter, who was the aunt of Delph Carpenter, well known for his work on the 1922 Colorado River Pact. The book says, Mary Carpenter came to the Timnath area in 1871 as a young wife and mother. Her recollections were recorded in her memoirs written in April 1906. The following account is part of her story. At last, my husband, Dr. Peter Carpenter, could practice his profession no longer and went out to Colorado to recuperate. He improved so much in a few weeks that he took a homestead near the Poudre River, 20 miles from Greeley and 7 miles from the little military station of Fort Collins. He then returned to Ohio to close up his business. In March, we drove up to the homestead and took possession of our new home on that desolate plain. Along the Poudre River was a growth of cottonwoods, but back from the stream, all was dry and barren. The soil was rich and productive, needing only irrigation to make it produce the finest crops. But that first season, our farm lay there swept by winds, without a drop of rain to cool or refresh it. My husband never rallied again. The winter after my husband's death was the hardest winter ever known on these plains. There has never been one with such depth of snow and such continual blizzards. The next spring, an effort was made to get out an irrigation canal, an enterprise in which the late Governor Ben Eaton was the prime mover. All of this took much time, but at last all was ready and we raised a crop. Just when it was ripe enough to harvest, a great cloud of grasshoppers settled down and destroyed it all. Thank you.
Thank you. Honored to be here as well today and represent Windsor, historically known as the hub of the Poudre, being 12 miles from Fort Collins and 12 miles from Greeley. So today I'm going to actually be reading to you from the highlights of the history of Windsor, Colorado. It was compiled by Roy Ray in 1940. Mr. Ray, he wrote, "It was not with any flourish or fanfare that the town of Windsor was founded. With the advent of the railway in 1881, more people began to settle in this beautiful Poudre Valley, where the first irrigation on any extensive scale in Colorado was being practiced with success. One of the earliest irrigation ditches was built by Governor Benjamin H. Eaton, taking water from the Poudre about a mile west of his homestead, about a mile south of Windsor, for the irrigation of his own lands and those below. This is known as the B.H. Eaton Ditch. Its priorities are among the oldest and best in the valley, and landowners under this canal are never short of water if there's water in the river. If Governor Eaton were alive today, it is doubtful if anything would please him more than to ride through this valley and feast his eyes upon the well-improved, fertile farms that have been made of the once barren lands. Sorry, mine's split over 2 pages. And the crops nurtured by the life-giving waters of the great irrigation system which he helped develop and construct. Although the Poudre River flows for the most part along the southerly edge of the valley, its waters are diverted through well-constructed irrigating canals to lands as far north as 6 to 9 miles. Large storage reservoirs conserve the waters of the Poudre for use as needed during the irrigation season. Water rights for farmlands around Windsor are the oldest appropriations and assure their owners ample water in normal seasons. Thank you.
And I too would like to thank all of you for being here this morning, and appreciate the fact that you would invite all of the mayors to talk a little bit about their communities and their history. I think Greeley has a great responsibility of being at the mouth of the river and the lowest on the river, but with the first water right. So I will finish this reading by quoting from the first annual report of the Union Colony of Colorado, written in 1871. That annual report said, "Time was when these plains around Greeley were designated the Great American Desert. There are books of geography yet used in the schools of this territory in which there are so described, and they were to those who, having eyes, saw not. At the magic touch of water, lo, the powers lying dominant for unnumbered ages suddenly awoke, and from out the lap of nature flowed abundant evidence that these were fertile instead of sterile plains. A contract had been given in 1870 for ditch number 3 to be constructed on the Poudre River, a canal 10 miles long capable of extending an additional 2 miles, 15 inches deep with an average width of 8 feet, carrying 2,500 inches of water, and capable of irrigating 5,000 acres, including the town site. When ditch number 3 was completed, the water came dancing through the flumes like a ministering angel, as indeed it was, scattering the blessings all along its path. It ran over the parched land, and the birds sang their welcome to the newcomers whose destiny had been brought to them by these late desolate but now blooming prairies. Trees were planted, and active, earnest, true-hearted men, women, and children went to work with their spirit that deserved and achieved success. A plaza square of 10 acres was laid out in the center of the town, and 2 miniature lakes, one called Lunar, one called Articular, from their respective shapes, were constructed and filled with water. To the northwest of the town was the island in the river, gave ample ground for a public park, and this land, comprised about 48 acres, was reserved and denominated Island Grove Park.
You know, a winter like this one, and we complain about walking to our cars, and you think about what these guys did when they came out on this river, settled, lived through these winters, built the ditches and structures and towns. It's really humbling to think what the people before us have done on this river. The history is important, and we really appreciate the mayors being here this morning and helping to capture that history and put context around what we're doing today here in the Poudre Valley. Thank you guys for helping us kick off the first Poudre River Forum, and let's give them one more round of applause, please. You guys are welcome to stay. We hope you'll be with us as long as you can. Also on your tables, remember I mentioned the Poudre Runs Through It Study Action Work Group. Well, you're about to see some of the leaders of that right here this morning. There's a progress report that was put in the center of the tables if you want to see some of the things that these folks have been working on. So I guess it was about a year and a half ago that we met out at Mary Lou's house, the gentleman that you see on the stage here, and began to talk about what we might do as a group of people who love and care about this river. And here they are before you. Mary Lou, I think it's just your turn. I'm going to turn it right over to you to start the discussion with these folks.
I think you're right, Reagan. What a pleasure to be able to facilitate a dialogue with these folks who all had a vision that we could work together on the Poudre instead of having disagreements about the Poudre. They believed in it from the very beginning, and they have put in many, many, many extra hours in the last 18 months on behalf of this group. And before I facilitate the dialogue with these folks who are the steering committee, I would like all the people in the room who are on the Poudre River, the Poudre Runs Through It Study Action Work Group to stand up. So these people have come together. They were chosen specifically to represent agriculture, urban, recreation, environmental, business, industry, all the aspects that we could think of who have interests and have reason to really care about the Poudre River. And so today, I'm going to ask each of these steering committee members to introduce themselves, give you a little bit of a background about who they are and what they do. And then I'm going to ask each of them to share with you what brought them to the table. Why did they decide they wanted to be involved in this? And then they're going to also each tell you what they think we've accomplished and what's keeping them at the table. And then after they each do that, then I'm going to facilitate some dialogue where they get into some details about some of the actions. At first, when you talk about what we've accomplished, I'm looking more for what we've accomplished in terms of getting this group going. And then we'll talk about the actions that the group is taking in the second question, if you will. So I'm going to start here and ask Mr. Trowbridge, please introduce yourselves.
My name is Dale Trowbridge. I am the general manager of the Cache-la-Poudre Irrigating and Reservoir Companies. We're a irrigation company that dates back to about 1870. We have a booth over here if you're interested in some of the history of that, just to give you, if you want to see what we do. It was interesting when the mayors, three of the mayors, the mayor of Fort Collins was more focused on the military side, the fort, but the other three, the mayors of the towns talked about agriculture as the basis for, and that's what we have. We have a system that is agriculturally based. We certainly interact with the cities. Definitely, that's part of our community, and there's definitely development that is involved with around our systems, and so we interact with them. So there's necessary for the reason I'm on this committee. Try to foster cooperation and at the same time protection. We're concerned about where the water rights are being increased in demand, and we want to protect the water rights that have been there for over 140 years. What I feel that has come out of this for myself is knowing what some of the issues are from other individuals. You get tunnel vision. All there is from Windsor to Gill, and it's our ditch and it's our land, but what we do impacts the other communities, the other ditches, the river itself. And so it's been good from my perspective to see what else is out there, what are some of the concerns, and so that's been very good from my perspective. So, John?
Good morning. Thank you all for coming. I'm John Bartholow. I'm a retired ecologist. So the question, I believe, is why am I here? What do I think we're really doing? There's four reasons why I'm here. Number one, I have some serious concerns about what I think the long-term health of the Poudre River is going to be. Number two, I was invited by the Colorado Water Institute by people that I know and respect and I think are committed to good outcomes. Number three, maybe the biggest of all, is I think that there are chances, opportunities to look for win-win solutions between the various stakeholders and water users along the river. Things where everything can improve, where we can improve the health of this working river. And number 4 is maybe a little harder to describe for me, but let me just give it a try. It's something that I've come to, an idea that's been growing on me, I guess, is that for us to be successful at our job of making a healthier working river, we need to grow the constituency that supports that same goal. We need to encourage people just like you, 275 or however many of you there are, that have that shared goal and can bring ideas and energy to this group and really help us out. So those are the 4 reasons why I'm here. And I think you'll hear more amongst the group as to some of the accomplishments that we have done so far, but this is one of them, and you are part of it. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is John Stokes, and I work for the City of Fort Collins. I've been there for about 10 years as director of the city's Natural Areas Program, and in that program we own and manage about 35,000 acres of land, some of which is managed as agricultural land, and we irrigate. I'm participating in this group for a couple of reasons. One reason is a professional obligation. A few years ago, the City Council and our city manager asked me to be more involved in Poudre River related issues, and so for the last few years I've had the good fortune of working more intensively on Poudre River related issues, especially in the Fort Collins area. Another reason that I'm participating is that Reagan Wascom and Mary Lou Smith asked me. They came from the Water Institute, and they were very gracious in inviting me to participate in what they described as an effort to develop more civil society on the Poudre River. And I was very much attracted to that idea. It's just, as Dale said, we get myopic. We get stuck in our worlds, and we fail to see beyond our common boundaries. And so I was attracted to the idea of being able to meet other players and actors on the Poudre River to better understand their needs and perspectives, and then potentially to develop some collaborative partnerships to work on problems of mutual interest. We will continue, no doubt, to have issues on the Poudre River that create conflict and that can be divisive. But if we are to aspire to a world-class example of a healthier working river, the only way that that will happen is through collaboration and partnerships on the river. I'm absolutely convinced of that. Fort Collins is high on the watershed, more or less. We're at the mouth of the canyon, and so we have the privilege of getting lots of clean water from above. But all too often, I think we have been too focused on our own needs in Fort Collins, and we just simply cannot achieve this aspirational goal of a healthy working river by working by ourselves in isolation. So I'm very happy to be part of this group. Thanks to all of you for being here today. As John said, I think very well you're part of this as well, and thanks for being here.
My name is Doug Rebotham. I'm with the Nature Conservancy, and I'm the Water Projects Director for the Colorado program of the Nature Conservancy. Like John, I have a professional obligation for being involved with the steering committee in that the Nature Conservancy owns and operates a really wonderful privately owned nature preserve known as Phantom Canyon, located on the North Fork of the Poudre, just below Halligan, ably managed by my colleague in the audience here, Heather Knight. And it's truly a remarkable place. It's a place at the convergence of the mountains and plains, excised by the river and the canyon, and as such, it's an ecologically vibrant place, perhaps not absolutely unique, although it does harbor some rare plant species and animal species. But more importantly, it is really a place of inspiration for, I think, how nature and human development can interact in a symbiotic fashion. So that's the professional reason why I'm involved. The Nature Conservancy's interest in the Poudre starts with the Phantom Canyon Preserve, but extends well beyond it to the river and the communities and the long history of human interaction with the Poudre on out to the east. Personally, I'm here, as the others have mentioned, by invitation of the Colorado Water Resources Institute, a group that is truly doing some remarkable things in Colorado to advance public understanding of water resources, ways in which often disparate points of view can come together to find common ground and resolve differences. The Water Resources Institute is really a remarkable entity. I think as Coloradans, we're very lucky to have the Institute and the employees of the Institute working on behalf of the resource. And it just so happens that it's in the Poudre's backyard. It's located in the Poudre's backyard, so a double benefit. But also my personal interest and involvement extends back actually many years ago when I was working in Governor Romer's administration as Assistant Director for Water Policy within the Department of Natural Resources. And in that capacity, without sort of boring you with the details, I was struck by the remarkable capacity of Northern Coloradans to solve problems and address issues. And as I re-engaged with the Poudre more recently, read a very interesting history of the Poudre authored by one of Reagan Wascom's graduate students. And that affirmed for me that the incredible capacity to come together and solve problems that I witnessed as a public servant in the Romer administration actually has its roots that go way, way back. It's a very deep and long tradition of problem solving and innovation and collaboration. And I think, while it may be self-evident to everyone in the room, I don't know that it's a terribly widely told or understood story. The story around water is often one of conflict, and while conflict does exist, and it certainly makes for great copy, and it's certainly dramatic. Frankly, I think the more compelling story, though perhaps untold, is the history of collaboration, the history of joint problem solving, of innovation. And Northern Colorado has been right at the heart of that for 150 years. And so as I came into the room, Mayor Norton was finishing his presentation and reading some lines that I just think resonate for me and hopefully for everyone else. Active, earnest, true-hearted men, women, and children. That's where the solutions lie to some vexing and pervasive water supply issues. But I think that we can tap the great legacy of Northern Colorado and solve these issues going forward for the benefit of the river and for the benefit of all who depend on it and use it. Thank you.
Thank you, and good morning to everybody. My name is Dan Brown. I'm a water attorney in Fort Collins with the firm of Fischer, Brown, Bartlett, and Gunn. I spend about 75% of my time exclusively working on water matters, water court processes. My role in this committee is I'm here on behalf of the Cache the Poudre Water Users Association. Many of you are aware of this organization. Those of you that aren't, this is an association of virtually all of the major water users, those who divert and put water to use outside of the river in this basin. But it's primarily an agricultural-driven organization, and my role on this committee, I think, is to bring, my hope is that I'm bringing that perspective, the perspective of water users to this discussion. I'm hoping I'm bringing a little bit of the expertise that I have from day-to-day activity in water court as well. I know that for many that seems to be a completely foreign land, so to speak, and so that's what I'm doing on, that's who I'm representing. Why I got involved is Mary Lou is quite persuasive, and so, but beyond that I was quite curious too, and so I wanted to get involved for that reason. What I've been doing primarily, and those in the group will know this, I've been kind of hammering this theme because I think it's important that from a water user standpoint, that if we're going to talk about collaborative solutions and cooperation, I think that's great. I think it needs to start from the standpoint of recognizing existing water rights, recognizing the existing prior appropriation system, and with market-based sorts of solutions. And I think if we can approach it in that way, there's a lot that can be done. And it's been quite a pleasure to me actually to see that these themes I think have been accepted, and we're making, I think, great progress moving forward with certain initiatives that we're talking about, because I think primarily there has been in the group a respect for the water users and the water rights and the system that exists. That's all I had for now.
You know, there's one thing that you guys haven't talked too much about, and that is how did the folks from the ecologist community and the folks from the agricultural community find out that neither of them had horns? I'd like to hear you talk about that just a tiny bit. Someone. How did you break
I'm holding
that
the mic,
barrier?
so I guess I would say I've never felt that anyone had horns. I feel like, though, there has been, and this has been a good process, because I'm not sure that we're always speaking the same language, and so that's, I think, part of what's been going on. It's hard to develop cooperative solutions also when you're not in the same room and you don't know these people, and so certainly one of the benefits of this group has been that I only knew Dale on the stage before this process got started, and now I think of all these people as friends. So that alone, I think, is maybe that's, I never felt like there's a great difference between water users and non-water users and environmentalists and others. I've just been bringing the perspective to this that water users, the only difference is they have water rights, and they want to protect them in this process.
Yeah, I'll just reinforce Dan's comment there. I don't think that any one of us views those who don't share our perspective as somehow being, evil or that their viewpoint is not worthy of respect. But as Dan said, I do think that oftentimes we talk past each other, and that's largely because we have not developed a common language, a common mode of communication. That takes work. It takes time. It's laborious often, and yet when it's achieved, some really important things can happen. I can understand, for example, Dan and Dale's needs with respect to protection of water rights and their fiduciary responsibility with respect to that goal. And in turn, as a result of listening to me and my colleagues, hopefully Dan and Dale can understand what constitutes an ecologically healthy river. And through that shared understanding, we can then move forward to devise approaches or ideas that respect our increased and enhanced and shared understanding of our respective viewpoints. So the real benefit comes from knowledge and discussion and dialogue, and only then do you really smooth off the otherwise rough edges and put yourself into a position for success.
I'd love to give the others a chance to answer that question, but we're going to go on to the next question. You guys are used to me doing that because I'm always keeping them on track time-wise. I want to go to what in the heck has the group accomplished? I'll point out, as Reagan did, that in the center of the table are a few copies of something that says 2012, 2013 accomplishments and 2013-2014 prospectus. I apologize that that piece looks exactly like your program, so you may not recognize that it's different, but pick it up. It tells you what the group has accomplished and what they're hoping to accomplish in this coming year. But that also gives me the chance to tell you we have a website. And if you go to that website, you can see a summary of every session this group has had. You can see every presentation that they watched, that they brought to one another, because it was learning from within and from without that we have our sessions. And you can find lots of resources about the Poudre, like Rose Leffler's piece that one of these fellows told you about the history of the Poudre. You can find those pieces on our website. So take notice of the website link here. So now I'm going to ask, of the three major initiatives that we launched, I'm going to ask John to talk just a little bit about this forum.
Oh, thanks, Mary Lou. The forum, well, we were jealous. There were other rivers that had forums, and we didn't have one on the Poudre River. And we thought that we should try and start what we hope turns into a tradition of meeting annually to talk to each other and to learn from each other and to rub shoulders with each other. This morning I came in about 8:30, and so I had a little time to just circle the room. And I circled the room and checked out the booths in the back. Everybody, please do that if you haven't done it, had a chance to do it already. And I learned a lot. Just in the space of a few minutes this morning, I met some folks who are what I would characterize as actors on the river. They are doing some kind of river-related work, and that was a real opportunity for me, a real learning opportunity. So as a group, we thought about this idea of bringing folks together at least once a year to have a conversation like this. I hope you're easy on us. This is the first one out of the box, first one out of the gate, and we're hoping it goes well. And there are feedback forms here somewhere, and I very much would encourage you at the end of the day, or when you're taking off, to please fill those out. We very much want your feedback on this event to see if it's worthwhile, to see how we might improve it into the future. So we're glad you're all here, and I think that's a short-winded explanation of the forum and where it came from with respect to this group.
And then another of the initiatives is called Flows. We have the 3 F's: forum, flows, and funding. I'm going to ask Dan to talk about flows, and I think he's going to have help from a couple of others here.
Sure. Somehow or other, I wound up chairing this flows committee. And it's been well, let me back up a step. The way that this group worked is we got together over the course of a year, and we started out with something like 40 ideas, just people brainstorming about things they'd like to see on the river. And at the end of all of that, we didn't discard the others, but we all settled on 3 that we thought had some promise and that we could all agree upon. One of these was this concept of flows, and so, going back to what I was just saying before, I've been saying in this process that from my perspective as a water lawyer for water users, use of water in the stream can be viewed, at least for me, and as just another kind of a use of water. And we have a whole system set up that's developed over years about how people use water and move water and change water. And I was saying, there's a legal system in place that allows us, if we take advantage of it, to treat flows in the river like other water uses. And so essentially I got asked to put my money where my mouth is, and so I'm chairing this. So working with the Colorado Water Conservation Board and the Water Trust, we're trying to come up with ways in which to formally sort of designate a reach of the river where people could dedicate water in a voluntary, market-based sort of way to a stretch of river for flows. And so I'm trying to bring some of my expertise in water court to bear on that. But that's sort of the formal flows concept. There's an informal kind of concept where without going through any sort of fancy legal mechanism, there might just be some ways for water users to cooperate and get multiple benefits out of water one of which would be flowing water through the river as it moves from one place to the other for someone else to use. And that's where I probably will turn over to Dale and John, because they actually took a shot at something like that this year, and I'll let them speak to that.
This last year, we were able to put into a little pilot program of how to get some water in the river when there's times when there's diminished flows. You get into August and certain times of the years when the flows diminish to the point where plant life and animal life can be endangered. And so the intent was our head gate is down between Timnath and Windsor. We take water off the river in that location. And so City of Fort Collins, after meeting the demands of their system or their city and all of the things, certain years they have some water left over that's rentable to the irrigation companies. They do that at times. This year it was an exchange. In August they put an extra 20 cubic feet per second. How much is that? You'll have to, I don't have time to explain that, but 20 feet per second in the river. And it came down through town, and we picked it up at our head gate. So in August, there was a couple-week period there, 10 days I believe it was, where that happened. Whether you noticed or not, there's some gauges on the river that maybe talk about here in a minute that you might be able to see some of that. We began to do it in September as well, but there was this minor event that happened in the middle of September that we got a little too much water, and that ended that. But it was an effort the first time to try to do that, and we certainly, as an irrigation company, can take advantage of that water that's available at any time from any of the municipalities in the summer. We are a water short system. We have to rent water each year to meet the demands of our ag, and at times when the supplies are abundant, we can take advantage of that. And it was a good way for the City of Fort Collins and New Cache to work together and try to meet the demands of both the irrigation side and try to improve the health of the river.
I think that was perfect. I won't add anything to that.
I think the only thing for the layperson to pick up is that normally the City of Fort Collins would release all of that water very, very quickly every year, and it would go down the river very quickly, and because of what they learned from the needs of the healthy river, they were willing to figure out a way to release it more gradually. Is that part of it?
Yeah, that's true. And I guess one other piece that I might add is that in addition to some of the water that the city brought, my department actually rented water that we then delivered, tried to deliver to Dale. Got flooded out. Our little 10 or 20 CFS got buried in 10,000 CFS. But this was an experiment, and it's, I think, instructive because this group fostered that experiment. If we hadn't had this group, it wouldn't have happened. And it's been a real pleasure getting to know Dale and to understand some of his business needs. And from the city's perspective, I'm trying to figure out how I can fit into Dale's business plan and develop and create co-benefits to the river and for his beneficial uses downstream.
Well, our time is up, but I want to tell you quickly about the third of the 3 F's, and that is funding. We have a subgroup that's working on the big, bold idea of a regional effort to get behind the Poudre River, not just for habitat restoration, but for maybe how we might divert water off the river in ways that might help us to meet some mutual goals, some diversion, perhaps improvements that might help agriculture, as well as help the health of the river. So all of that would take big money, and we're going to be hearing from the city of Greeley in April. They're working on some ideas, and we're gonna see if we can't do some regional efforts. And we're talking big money. We're not talking just a little philanthropic dollar here or there. We're talking about perhaps philanthropic dollars to be seed money, but then to get into some public money that would help us put our money where our mouth is as far as the Poudre is concerned. So thank you, fellows. I think people got a real good taste of what the group is all about.